Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a very fun open Great League team built around the most recent Calm Day Mon, GLAIVE RUsh Baxcalibur. Now this team, I would definitely classify as more of a team for fun rather than for climbing, but I did have surprisingly good results with it. This team was created by 315 Katanari and features the Baxcalibur as the lead, with Shadow Canine and Shadow Quagsire in the back. One thing to note before we get into the battles, this was probably my roughest day of battles in terms of game state on the new system. My issue was that at the start of games, my game would frequently pause, sometimes leaving me behind several turns. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. We pick up a pretty nice lead in the first match, Baxcalibur into Shadow Quagsire. I'm going to look to overfarm massively with the Baxcalibur and fire off energy when I get to the back-to-back Glaive Rushes. Glaive Rush is an incredibly efficient attack. Quagsire is forced to put up the shield, and even at -1 defense, I should barely survive a Mud Bomb. If my opponent went for an Aqua Tail bait, that's very good news for me. Now, I'm more than happy to shield up, and then just look to massively overfarm. This time they're not going to bait, they full send the Mud Bomb. I overfarm quite a bit, and this Glaive Rush is easily going to be enough to knock out the Quagsire and win me the lead. Quagsire gets KO'd, I'm now at -2 defense, in comes Empoleon, looking for the Metal Sound down, but I'm able to hang on and make it to a third Glaive Rush. That Glaive Rush does nice damage onto the Empoleon. Empoleon exits up a ton of energy, but now I can send in the Shadow Quagsire. Quagsire is going to have a very good matchup here. Hydro Cannon lands, I pivot into the Shadow Kanto Ninetales, as my opponent reveals their final Pokemon is Fearow. I was predicting they were going to switch out there, so I did not want to give them any extra energy head start, and I'm very happy that I didn't, because Fearow up energy is an absolute force of nature. Fearow is going to CMP tie, Drill Run to my second Weather Ball, but I'm always going to be putting up the shield because I need to lock in this damage. Weather Ball will basically put them into Ember farm down range. The Embers are just adding up too much, and that's going to force my opponent to fire off energy. Now I can bring back in the Quagsire, throw 2 Mud Shots, and wait the turn. So I throw 2 Mud Shots, wait the turn, in comes Empoleon, and I farm up to the back-to-back Aqua Tails. This puts me 1 away from the Mud Bomb plus Aqua Tail double up. Mud Bomb KOs the Empoleon. Fearow still 2 away from the game-winning Drill Peck. And with careful energy management and not letting the opponent catch the Aqua Tail, we're able to get the Game 1 win. Picking up a decent lead in Game number 2, leading Baxcalibur into Fearow. Now, the first thing I noticed about this matchup is that Fearow is getting shredded by these Dragon Breaths. These Dragon Breaths are hitting way harder than I initially expected. It looks like Baxcalibur may even be able to fully farm down in the 2s. I think the only way I lose this matchup is if I try and CMP tie and I end up giving them a free peck, so I'm just not going to throw. Instead, I'm just going to double shield Baxcalibur and go for the full farm down. Fearow able to grab the final shield, but look at Baxcalibur go! Baxcalibur exits with so much energy as my opponent brings in Mimikyu. Here, I should have gone for the Glaive Rush to break the shield, but either way, I'm going to get attack drops onto this Mimikyu. Mimikyu is going to sneak through the Shadow Claw, but now they're going to be at -2 attack, and they're very, very low. I'm down a shield, I decide to bring in the Kanto Ninetales, and my opponent sends in Shadow Celio. Shadow Celio up a shield is basically this backline's worst nightmare. I bait with the Weather Ball, I'm able to get the shield, I bank energy, and it's time to send in the Shadow Quagsire. Shadow Quagsire is about to get shredded by a Surf, but I know that I will be able to hang on here. Surf connects, Quagsire barely able to survive, and I'm going to immediately return fire with the Mud Bomb. My opponent's going to need a Body Slam to knock out the Quagsire and a Surf for the Kanto Ninetales. They farm up to that double up, but they lose charge attack priority to the Quagsire. This was always going to be a pretty difficult game for my opponent, because if they don't farm up to leave with the Surf, then they're going to end up losing charge attack priority to the Kanto Ninetales. Speaking of charge attack priority, Mimikyu is going to win it over the Kanto Ninetales, but I'm just simply too healthy. Shadow Sneak, not going to cut it, and my opponent will resign the match. We pick up a decent lead in the next match, Baxcalibur into Charjabug. My opponent ends up banking energy and then save switching into a Blastoise. Blastoise is a problem Pokemon for this team. I stay in with the Baxcalibur, launch a Glaive Rush, and then look to pivot out and send in the Shadow Quagsire. This team is very, very strong into Charjabug, so even if my opponent is able to make a play for Switch Advantage, honestly, I don't really see how Switch Advantage would help them. Because if they don't have the Baxcalibur aligned to the Charjabug, well, it's going to be aligned onto the Kanto Ninetales. So I decided to make a bit of a risky play. I'm not going to play for Switch. Instead, I'm going to go for Monster Farm Down with Baxcalibur. I think that Baxcalibur up a bunch of energy could prove to be very, very annoying for my opponent to remove from the field to play. So I shield up the Hydro, I'm going to look for the full farm down, my opponent pivots out, and they send in Shadow Quagsire. Now I get to unleash Glaive Rush. This is going to hurt. My opponent puts up the shield, but now I can send in the Kanto Ninetales. And Quagsire is only at 7 mud shots here. They do not have the double up that they would need. They burned their last Protect Shield on a Glaive Rush, and that means double super effective Energy Ball is about to wipe them from the field of play. Energy Ball connects. Quag gets 1 shot. The Blastoise should be fully energy dry, which means they're 3 rollouts off the move. They're 9 off the Hydro Cannon, but I'm only 8 off of the Weather Ball Fire. They're low enough that this will be easily taking the knockout, and then all that's left to the back is going to be the Charge-a-Bug. In comes Charge-a-Bug. I bank energy, send in Baxcalibur, make the Glaive Rush on the Charge Attack priority tie. We didn't need to do this, but it's the Baxcalibur show. Glaive Rush absolutely annihilates Charge-a-Bug. Charge-a-Bug will be able to take the knockout with the X-Scissor, but I can just bring in the Ninetales, get the Ember down, and that's a good game. We see a pretty familiar lead in the next match, Baxcalibur into Fearow. And immediately I'm realizing I'm doing way less Dragon Breath damage than I did to the previous Fearow. Now I do have a pretty high rank Baxcalibur, so it appears if you have a high rank Baxcalibur and your opponent has a high rank Fearow, then you could actually get a bulk point in this matchup to make Dragon Breath do substantially less damage. So unfortunately, unlike last Fearow lead, I won't just be able to farm down. However, Baxcalibur is always going to be able to win the 2s here by virtue of winning Charge Attack priority. So I'm just going to look to overfarm, build up to the back-to-back Glaive Rushes. My opponent puts up the shield. They risk the Charge Attack priority tie, but trainer, you're not winning that one. I am a Baxcalibur. Glaive Rush KOs the Fearow, and switch advantage has been secured. In comes a non-Shadow Quagsire, and I decide to bring in my own. I really didn't want to send in my Kanto Ninetales down so much energy. It felt like it could end up being a pretty risky endgame where if I don't land the Energy Ball, then my opponent could just run away with it. So instead, I'm just going to play it out, firing off Mud Bombs. I don't yet know who wins Charge Attack priority in this matchup, and my opponent is now doubled up on Aqua Tails. If I can win Charge Attack priority, Mud Bomb will deliver the KO. So I click the Mud Bomb, but I lose Charge Attack priority, and unfortunately, all my Quagsire energy goes to waste. Quagsire gets KO'd, back in comes the Ninetales. In the back, my opponent has Unova Stunfisk, and suddenly I realize I win this game. This is the power of Shadow Kanto Ninetales up just a little bit of energy. I end up getting the Energy Ball debuff, but the debuff is not going to have an impact on this game. Either way, I can take the knockout from here with a Weather Ball. I just need to overfarm to the max, go for the Charge Attack priority tie, and now I'm only 2 off of the Energy Ball. They have to try and Mud Shot down with the Quagsire, and it's just simply never going to work. Shadow Kanto Ninetales putting on an absolute clinic. Energy Ball KOs the Quagsire. I do love that fainting animation, and we're able to get the win. Baxcalibur into Charge-a-Bug once again in the next match. My opponent save switches into Kingdra, and honestly, this team is pretty soft to Kingdra. I don't have a good answer here. Again, we noticed at the start that little pause. That little pause is really, really annoying. That's been my first, real gameplay issue that I've had with this new system, but the fact that it kind of starts me behind in a lot of matches really makes a lot of these games substantially more difficult than they should be. Kingdra is at -1, which means Surf, not really going to be too much of a problem for the Quagsire. I try and overfarm 2 Mud Shots, and unfortunately, I just can't count, and that's going to cost me quite a bit of HP. However, I should be able to farm up to the back-to-back Mud Bombs here. I'm very, very low, but honestly, I think this works out great. Charge-a-Bug is not going to get a lot of farm, and I should always be able to make a Mud Bomb into the Charge-a-Bug as it gets brought back in. With Charge-a-Bug taking this damage, they're going to be firmly into Weather Ball range, and I decide, you know what? I'm just going to bring in the Kanto Ninetales. So Ninetales hits the field, there's going to be the Shadow Quagsire in the back, and Shadow Quagsire will fire off the Aqua Tail just to get their turn back. I'm forced to put up the shield. It might be a bit of a risky bait, but I want to save as much energy as I possibly can. So I build up a ton of energy, bait with the Weather Ball Fire, cross my fingers, and I'm able to get the shield. In comes Baxcalibur as they fire off energy. They go for the Aqua Tail. Baxcalibur will survive, but get farmed down. I bring back in the Ninetales. Their switch timer not yet available. I fire off Energy Ball. This is double super effective, and Quagsire gets KO'd. All that's left is the Charge-a-Bug in the back, and they know they just don't have the damage output. They're in Weather Ball range, and that's a good game. We see a terrible lead in the next match, Baxcalibur into A9. A safe switch into Quagsire, answered with the Feraligatr, but since we're both Shadow and I'm on Mud Bomb, up energy, I should actually be able to win the 2s here. Unfortunately, my game did the thing it's been doing throughout a lot of these battles, which is freeze at the start as I try and pivot out, so I'm not quite sure where their A9 is at in terms of energy. But I don't let them CMP tie, I overfarm and I fire off the Aqua Tail, so that way if they want my final shield, they're going to have to give me their first shield beforehand. and I'm very comfortable with just fully mudshotting down here, exiting up a ton of energy. My opponent pivots back into the Ninetales, and now we have the Fire Ninetales versus the Ice. If they have Chilling Water, it will do quite a lot of damage, but they don't. They throw the Weather Ball. So they're on Weather Ball and Dazzling Gleam. I overfarm quite significantly, firing off the Weather Ball Fire. I imagine this will take the knockout. My opponent clearly thinks so as they put up the shield. They do have quite a lot of energy. This could be a Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam would definitely hurt. My Ninetales will be able to survive, and now I just immediately fire off the Weather Ball. I want this Ninetales off the field as quickly as I possibly can, and no matter what they have in the back, I'm looking to send in Baxcalibur. Baxcalibur will be able to absorb Mud Bomb. That's really not going to be a problem for the Baxcalibur. Even though Icy Wind is super effective, I think I'm just going to fire off the Glaive Rush. Glaive Rush will put me at -1, but this is going to lock in some really nice damage on a Stunfisk. Look at how efficient of a move Glaive Rush is. It's just absolutely absurd. My opponent makes a very nice catch. They catch the second Glaive Rush on a Feraligatr, but it's just not going to matter. My Quagsire has an entire Mud Bomb loaded that I have not used, and Quagsire notably will win charge stack priority over the Stunfisk. So I just get to bring in the Quagsire, go for the Mud Bomb, and Mud Bomb is going to be massive overkill onto the Stunfisk. Mud Bomb takes the knockout, and even despite a very rough lead, we're able to claw our way back and get the win. We move to the next match, and we lead Baxcalibur into the other Ninetales. This time, it is the Fire Kanto Ninetales. I believe Baxcalibur can win all evens here, but it's a very close matchup either way. My opponent grabs a shield advantage, save switches into Empoleon, and this matchup right here is why I have Mud Bomb on Shadow Quagsire. Arguably, Stone Edge is probably better in a meta where there are so many flyers like Fearow and Mantine running around, but the consistency, having something that can shut down Empoleon, I felt was very valuable considering the fact that Baxcalibur really can't do much in that matchup. My opponent will end up matching shields. I'm going to give up my final Protect shield because I need this Empoleon off the field. Well, if I can't knock it out, at the very least, I'm hoping I can put it into range where Baxcalibur will take the KO, but they actually end up letting it go. That's very, very helpful for me. My opponent should probably bring in their final Pokemon here. They can't really afford to bring in the Ninetales. They bring in the Shadow Primeape, and Shadow Primeape is going to take some pretty monster damage from this Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb is going to be no shield, and Primeape gets absolutely rocked, and now I think the winning play is actually just to bring in Baxcalibur. This is only a Rage Fist. It will not be able to one-hit KO me. It's going to do a ton of damage, though. I try for the farm down. I can't quite get it, and I'm forced to snipe with the Ninetales. But I have the Glaive Rush banked. I'm up energy on my Ninetales, and even though my opponent has a shield, they are basically in a position where they cannot win. Because if they ever shield this second Weather Ball, then they're just getting KO'd by the Glaive Rush. So they're forced to let it go. And in doing so, then I should just be able to get the Ember down and take the win. So they're going to fire off Weather Ball. That's not really going to be a problem for the Ninetales. They get to a second Weather Ball as well, but I still have the Baxcalibur in the back, so we're still good. Turns out my Ninetales is barely able to survive, and we get the win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Baxcalibur into Shadow Quagsire. Again with that pause. That pause is very, very irritating to try and play around. I do hope that's something they're able to patch in very quickly. In this match, we actually get to see how much damage the Mud Bomb does. Mud Bomb does a lot of damage to Baxcalibur, but Baxcalibur is able to survive it. I fire off Glaive Rush. They're going to be under-tapping as they fire off that Aqua Tail, and I decide to put up the shield. I'm going to play to the one shield. My opponent ends up pivoting out, and this is a catastrophically bad Pokemon for me to see. I don't have anything that beats Mantine on this team. Mantine beats every single Pokemon that I have. I'm able to get a debuff off with the Icy Wind, but maybe I would have been better off instead going for the Glaive Rush, as Glaive Rush would have done a lot more damage and put them into Energy Ball range. But by going for the Icy Wind, now I think the Energy Ball will not knock out. Energy Ball lands, Mantine is able to survive, and I'm forced to fire off the Weather Ball on the CMP tie. Weather Ball actually doesn't get shielded. I'm able to KO the Mantine, which is very, very helpful, as that would have been an absolute disaster for my Quagsire to see. But you know what else will be a disaster for my Quagsire to see? That's going to be the Fearow that gets brought in here. Fearow puts up the shield. I need a catch to win the game. I go for the catch, but I do not get it. And this game is tragically over. The Fearow has too much energy. My Quagsire will get 2-hit KO'd by Drill Packs, and unfortunately, they are not in Aqua Tail range. I got some Ember damage onto them, but it's just simply not enough. My opponent can always just look to overfarm. They're going to position themselves to where they can double up. Drill Peck for the Quagsire, Drill Run for the Kanto Ninetales, so when the Aqua Tail does not take the knockout, I'm out of here. I'm going to be resigning the match. Hopping into the final match, we lead Baxcalibur into Blastoise, and unfortunately, this is one of the pauses that actually ended up costing me turns. My opponent throws on 5, but I do not have 16 Dragon Breaths worth of energy. Add to that the fact they're running Ice Beam out of nowhere, and this battle has gone from bad to worse. Glaive Rush will get the shield, but now with the shield advantage, suddenly I can get the Shadow Kanto Ninetales on the field. Shadow Kanto Ninetales was honestly a sleep paralysis demon of several of my teams this week, so I figured I may as well give it a go, and honestly, I have absolutely loved running this Pokemon on this team. Energy Ball connects, that's going to be the end of Blastoise. My opponent's now going to bring in Seismitoad, but this is not an answer to Shadow Kanto Ninetales up energy. I get to fire off Energy Ball, Seismitoad, forced to put up the shield, and as long as my opponent doesn't go for a catch, I should be in a very good spot. They're going to bait with the Icy Wind, I will put up the shield, I'm going to look to overfarm, I wait the turn, but I wait too long, and they're able to get the catch on a Togetic. That is entirely my fault. I was doing these battles pretty shortly after I woke up, and clearly I was not awake enough to be playing, as I accidentally waited 2 turns there and let my opponent get a devastating catch on a Togetic. Now, Togetic is a very spicy pick. I absolutely have to respect that. Togetic, let's see what moveset they're running. They're on Dazzling Gleam, and that is absolutely going to hurt. At this point, even if Quagsire gets knocked out here, I have so much energy on the Ninetales that I've already won the game anyway. And it turns out Heat Wave does not take the knockout. I'm barely able to hang on. Importantly, Seismitoad doesn't have to move, so I can just pivot into the Ninetales, snipe with the Energy Ball, my opponent knows it, and they're out of here. They're going to resign the match. All in all, I ended up having way more fun with Baxcalibur than initially expected. I was realistically running this team just to try and tank because the queue times have been pretty horrendous over the past few days. So I was running this team to try and tank, and this team actually ended up working out surprisingly well. I did end up going positive with the team overall, even with the many game issues. Now, interestingly enough, I did actually try Competitors Cup for a few battles just to see, you know what, is Competitors Cup going to work any better? And believe it or not, I had the same issue of the game pausing right at the start in Competitors Cup as well. I ended up going out and doing the Skarmory Raid Day. I was doing some Rocket Grunts. It was doing the pause before the Rocket Grunts as well. So, weirdly enough, even though it was an issue that I had on the new system, I think it might just be an issue with the app itself. Whereas I don't know what they did overnight, because yesterday's sets I didn't have this issue with, but today's sets apparently I just randomly paused at the start of each battle. Sometimes it didn't end up impacting the game where my game was able to catch back up and I got the fast moves. Other games I ended up being really behind. There was some unfortunate losses that ended up cutting out. Like there's one game where I led into a jump fluff. I threw the Icy Wind as soon as I got it, and somehow it was a charge attack priority to an Acrobatics, where I had just lost 2 turns because of that pause. So I really hope that's something they're able to clean up pretty soon, because that definitely added to the frustration level here playing Go Battle League. But even despite all of that weird game stuff that was going on, this team was just a lot of fun to play. I think Baxcalibur, it's kind of an unwieldy Pokemon to use because of how frail it is. I think Baxcalibur's stats are pretty similar to Morpeko. It's right around that like 1600 to 1650 stat product, so it's definitely very frail, but I kind of view it as kind of a one-shield demon. Whereas in the ones, its ability to go up against a lot of Pokemon that use 10-turn pacing, and if you're in a matchup where Dragon isn't resisted, be able to farm them into a range where you can fire off back-to-back Glaive Rush, and Glaive Rush could pick up the knockout, I think is actually pretty cool. So it's definitely not a meta Pokemon, it's definitely not a must-use Pokemon by any means, but I think Glaive Rush on Baxcalibur gives it a bit more play than PvPoke was saying, as PvPoke has it ranked at number 450. I think that's probably a little bit too harsh, but I'm pretty happy that a mon that's ranked number 450 on PvPoke is still something that I can run for a few sets in the Open Great League, above Expert Elo, so on page 1 of the leaderboards, and still end up going positive. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video of Baxcalibur Mayhem in the Open Great League, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.